viewers, welcome to the CSR Universe's Leaders Talk segment. So as we all know that COVID-19 had impacted the education sector most dramatically. Around over 1.2 billion children were across the globe were out of the classroom due to the pandemic that broke out in March 2020. However, the industry showed signs of revival with the ingenious thinking and intervention of the social sector and its stakeholders, the government, corporates, NGOs, and implementation agencies that shifted their core capabilities towards dealing with the challenges that the education sector was facing. United Way Delhi is one such organization that focused its energies towards leveraging the power of digital learning and making it accessible to the most needy populations of the country. And because of its commendable work during the COVID crisis, was also the recipient of the CSR Universe COVID Response Impact Awards 2021. And today, in our Leaders Talk segment, we have with us Ms. Pallavika Ahlawat, who's the head of program development and donor relations at United Way Delhi. She will share insights and the organization's initiatives with us. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Ruchika. Thanks for the welcome.
All right. So to begin with, Ms. Ahlawat, we would like to know what exactly were the initiatives that were rolled out during the COVID crisis, and what have been the core strengths of your organization, and how well did you incorporate those in tackling with the crisis?
I think as a model, because United Way as a core belief and approach works in a way that, it is all about getting every stakeholder on the table. So while you're discussing the issue, as well as while you're trying to come up with a solution that can, tackle the issue for that local community, it's about getting everybody who's an important stakeholder together on one table, whether that means getting in touch with the right government stakeholders, getting in touch with the right corporate donors or funders. I mean, it can be anybody, even individual givers, the community representation, right? In terms of them actually being able to convey firsthand what the issue is all about, get those things. So having everybody together, I think that because it was United Way's core belief as an organization, and United Way is a 135-year-old organization. I mean, started from the US and now 7 chapters in India since the last 35-40 years. We played on the same strength, and getting everybody together really actually worked the best in terms of a crisis like COVID. I think we all see, even in the country, when everybody came together, whether it was on social media, I mean, especially during the second wave, which was much, much harsher on everybody in the country, what helped was everybody coming together. And that's what we did as an organization also since day one last year when the pandemic first hit the country. And yeah, I think that really helped in terms of getting everybody together, finding the right solutions, finding the right donor, and moving ahead with the support of the government in terms of ensuring that we're not parallelly drawing up systems also, but complementing efforts that the government is already making. Yeah.
Right. So what exactly were the initiatives? Can you elaborate on the projects that were undertaken?
Absolutely. So since last year, I mean, March 2020, that we began working on COVID response immediately as it hit the country, there have been 4 or 5 key pillars to our program. And obviously some got eventually added as we had to ensure. So, I mean, just one disclaimer that we had to ensure that we adapt every single day, because the on-ground situation changed every single day that time, right? I mean, whether it was the first wave or the second wave. So adaptability and fast movement, flexibility with that was key. So whether that expectation setting had to be done with the donors also in terms of, keeping things flexible to deploy funds from one place to the other, depending on where it is required the most. Some of the key programs that we did was, one major definitely has been supporting government hospitals, institutes, not just only across Delhi NCR. I mean, obviously Delhi NCR, I don't think we've left any hospital that we've not worked with or not supported in some form or the other, but also reaching out to other states, other countries, other states in the country which needed help at that time. Say it was Chennai, which was at peak at a certain point, or it was Mumbai, or it was Bangalore. So we've reached out to multiple states across the country where the focus was on upgrading the facilities and equipments and the requirements at government hospitals. How can you supplement those doctors with what is already coming in from the government, but still there's a gap, right? Because everything was so fast, everything was needed so fast. That was one program. The other definitely being focused on frontline workers. So whether it is municipal workers, sanitation workers, police personnel on duty on COVID duty, how do you support their efforts, their protection? Because for us also 10, 12 people team that volunteered to work during a COVID crisis right from the beginning, which was completely voluntary. I mean, we couldn't have forced anybody to risk their lives and come out and work at that time. So for our frontline workers, as well as the frontline workers across the teams that they were working in, how do you ensure their protection? How do you support their efforts? Whether it was giving them protective gear, or with police personnel, even basic things like a ice box, right, which is required in the heat where they're on duty on the road 24 hours. So very simple things, but very important things that really help them keep going. That was another project. The third, broadly, I would say, was supporting the migrant community, which faced a lot of difficulty with the sudden lockdown, right? So in terms of supporting their ration requirements, or in terms of supporting them to travel back to their home state. So we've done all kinds of support to ensure that our communities are also getting supported in the other ways that they're getting affected because of the COVID. Eventually, definitely, education became a core focus because education was at loss. I mean, schools have now been shut for almost 2 years, 1.5, 2 years, and the child in a government hospital doesn't even have access to digital mediums of, reaching that classroom, that digital classroom. So that was getting them digital access, so providing that infrastructure, the tablets, etc. Even internet connectivity, we ensured that we provide internet connectivity for at least a year while we're doing those tabs, because that is also a challenge at the level of these communities. But at the same time, also those who have access, the government school teachers who are struggling with the sudden adaptability to a digital medium. So how do you support that process as well, right? In terms of digital content, which is then, or even reaching out to smaller kids door to door, right, with worksheets, who cannot have digital access whatsoever. So there were multiple strategies that were taken in to adapt and ensure that we're plugging gaps and trying to be the support mechanism with government schools and teachers and the entire system as much as we could. Having said that, now this year, I think towards the end of last year and beginning of this year, the focus moved more towards developing the right vaccination infrastructure, right? While vaccination was just about to start last year in December, there were a lot of gaps that required support in terms of the supply chain, whether it was refrigerated vans that we have donated to multiple district administrations for the supply of those vaccines from the main delivery hub to the localized public health centers. Or whether it was actually holding vaccination camps, right, in partnership with either, say, a government PHC or a government doctor holding vaccination camps. Because what happens at this community level is also the difficulty to get mobilized, get registered, and actually reach the center for a vaccination. So that, support there in terms of facilitating that process for the communities that we work in. And again, most of these programs, all of these programs have been run pan-India, and we've definitely received a lot of appreciation as well, whether it was from the Chief Minister of Delhi, where we received a very formal appreciation letter as well to, say that we've been very flexible and adaptable in terms of supporting the needs of the hour. Even with Gurgaon, United Delhi was the first, United Delhi had set up the first government testing laboratory last year. The government was still then outsourcing its tests to private labs and incurring a huge cost on that. So, the Honorable Chief Minister of Haryana actually inaugurated that lab with us, and that was the first government lab that got set up. So we've done multiple such things, and we just hope that we don't see those days again. We are moving hopefully towards a better situation, because most of us are now getting vaccinated. A lot of the population is now vaccinated. But yes, we're always there whenever a crisis comes in, and to respond and be the first responders on site. Yeah.
Great. Also, I would like to know what were the challenges that you had to face while maintaining COVID protocols. So how did you go about implementing the policies?
So COVID protocols, I wouldn't say it was a challenge really, because it was a challenge for everybody in the country or in the world that time in terms of understanding how to deal with a situation like COVID. So we faced a similar situation, but what we did ensure was, one, that the team that was getting put together, that was volunteering to go out and be the first responders on site. We did arrange for a separate accommodation for them, because during the first wave we were all the more probably I would say ignorant to how this can affect your family, or elders or children in your family. And so we did ensure that we have a separate accommodation for people who are volunteering, and they don't go back home for those 10-15 days, that they're able to quarantine themselves before going back home. I mean, that's a huge sacrifice that those people did, and that sacrifice started from the top of the organization. I mean, our CEO was the first one to put his camp there, and then the team followed. So I think it's been an amazing journey. We did face the same challenges that everyone else did, but ensuring that everybody who's there gets their health insurance done by the organization, is given enough protective wear, is given enough guidelines to how to conduct themselves even on field, and obviously a separate accommodation to ensure that the family isn't getting any collateral impact in the process.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So during the implementation of your policies, did you see any new partnerships emerging? Were there any new donors, corporate partners coming up?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, whether it was corporates or whether it was individuals based out of India, right? People who are based in the US or Canada or Europe. I think we saw a lot of traction because everybody felt for the situation that time and wanted to help out in the best way possible. And for people sitting especially remotely outside the country, the best way was to send in funds and see that, it's getting to the hospital, it's getting to the frontline workers, it's getting to the people that they need. But yes, we did see a lot more traction in the sense of, donors reaching out from various parts of the country as well as, outside the country. And like I said, all kinds of donors. It was not necessarily just corporates, but also other firms or individuals, or, a lot of people giving that time. Yeah.
So for the specific category, the education category where your organization has received the award, who all partnered with you in terms of corporates, and did you see any kind of change in their collaboration? How different was their participation and contribution towards your goals?
Sorry, I didn't get the second part of the question. Could you repeat that?
So who all were your corporate partners, and how different was their participation and contribution towards your goals?
We're talking specific to this program, right? The digital access, digital education access. Yeah. I'm not sure if I should name any donors, because again, I might miss out somebody and I might say a name here. So, but yes, there have been significant contributors, right? From, from, like I said, corporates as well as individuals who wanted to, really who felt for the education space as much, and they understood that what are those major challenges that are being faced today during a time when the schools have really shut down. For a private school student, it might have been a slightly easier way to adapt to a virtual medium, maybe because it's easier for them to have an access, have an infrastructure in place. But for government school students, it became much more difficult. I mean, and the difference in approach also, I think, from one donor to the other in this specific program, I mean, the degree of variance wasn't high. More or less, everybody agreed that yes, this is the issue. Digital access is an issue specifically for government school students, and yes, we need to do something about it. Now, we might have somebody saying that yes, I am willing to support the digital infrastructure, which is the tablets or devices that the student need. But some donor might say that I would rather support the content bit of it and not the device. But I think more or less everybody agreed on the issue, and that something has to be done about it. Though we had Byju's or Google or everybody, reaching out in terms of offering those specific devices as well for children to be able to, also get modules of say Byju's, which are more interactive and experience learning based. So we had multiple donors reach out with those kind of solutions and offers as well, instead of just putting in money. So we did see all kinds of traction there. Yeah.
Okay. So since you might have seen, the shift that has happened in terms of CSR. So what are your expectations from your corporate partners now in the changing times?
Okay, so now in the changing times, I think one is we're already seeing a shift even from the donor perspective in terms of focusing more on now rebuilding post-COVID, right? Whether it is in terms of long-term recovery, which is more livelihood-based and aspirational livelihood-based. How do you get people back on their feet, especially people who have really lost or have been severely impacted by COVID, have lost a breadwinner or have gone into severe distress. So I think more or less, even our donors, the conversations that we have today is moving towards rebuilding after COVID, livelihood, education, all of these pieces. The other area that is of high focus now that I see in our conversations is probably environmental and sustainability goals, right? The ESG also that has come out, which is environmental sustainability and governance. So a lot of focus on e-mobility, because with the pollution and with the emergency that now people are still able to see, the trickle effect is still slower in terms of people realizing how this is the need of the hour and we really need to step up individually as well as collectively. But I think that's another area of focus that's getting more traction. Yeah.
All right. Also, was there any kind of shift in from your traditional CSR strategies during this period to just particularly focusing on, implementing COVID-related initiatives? And how difficult was it? Did you have to re-strategize, rethink?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, over the last 1.5 year, most of the CSR funding has gone towards COVID response, and that did leave a dent on some of the regular projects that have been in function for a while now, and how those scopes had to be reduced or those projects got reduced, and how do we now get back to focusing on those regular required projects as well. So definitely that remains like a balancing act challenge today. But yes, that will take some time. What has also happened is because COVID has impacted revenue as well for people, so has the profits, and so has the profits got impacted, and so has the CSR fund as well. So for some corporates, we also see that the CSR fund has gone down a little. But I think having said that, we are now looking at long-term projects, and whether you call it COVID recovery now from a livelihood perspective or from an, like I said, but yes, now the focus is moving back towards those long-term projects instead of the COVID response that was obviously immediate response and that was short-term and done and dusted with. Yes.
Okay, one thing that I have been now wanting to ask people who have invested so much into online, education and putting their CSR activities, initiatives towards this agenda. With the sudden shift away from classroom learning to online, many are wondering whether this transition will hold any relevance in the post-pandemic world. What are your thoughts?
I think it will, because now what we are seeing is whether even if you see, even today, physical schools have not started 100%. They've not. And because children are yet to be vaccinated, they still remain vulnerable. So I think from a COVID perspective, definitely, but even post-COVID, we are in the digital era. There is no two way about it that a child now having access to digital medium for education will only benefit and not progress backwards from that, right? It will always act as a supplement to the ongoing physical education, right? The physical one-on-one classroom teaching. I think it will always act as a supplement to it. Even from a government perspective, I think they've been pushing a lot of digital content and experiential learning, even in the school. Like if you talk about smart classrooms or you talk about, computer labs, the focus has been on shifting more towards this. COVID era has probably just sped things up, right? I mean, it has just made the transition faster and more forced. But I think that was already a pathway that was required and that the country wanted to move towards, including the public schools. It's just, it takes a lot more time for them to gain access to those digital mediums than, for a more well-off private school kid. So I think in general, digital education is important, irrespective. And yeah, I mean, it will be long-term useful. That's what we see.
Well, that was great. Also, what have been your key learnings from all these experiences, and what would you like to recommend to your peers, your partners, and the society at large?
I think what two key learnings actually. One is collective action. Unless everybody comes together towards a common goal, it's very difficult for one organization or for one person to really change anything. So I think collectivity that really came together, and we saw that wholeheartedly during the second wave and post that. I think if that momentum doesn't break and people remain collective, uh, that can help deal with most of the issues that we're facing as a country or as a community today. Collectivity is all, collective goal is what can really help, really speed things up and really bring that right momentum, right direction to what we want to achieve. I think that's one. The other key learning is taking care of yourself. Uh, like you always hear a warning in an airplane that your oxygen mask have to be secured before you start helping somebody else. I think whether it is mental health, whether it is physical health, I think taking care of yourself, finding time for yourself, and for people around you, for your family, for friends. I think that's also because life is too short, life is too fragile, and unless we also balance that with the work that we are trying to do, it will only work in the short term. Long term, everybody is going to burn out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think these are two broad learnings.
Question to you is, since the FCRA amendment bill is in, and then CSR has been made mandatory, and what do you think about the corporate fund getting diverted to PM CARES fund from regular long-term projects? How will that impact the CSR industry?
So it definitely reduces the funds available for CSR projects, right? On-ground projects. However, I do understand the need for a PM Care Fund as well. And I wouldn't say that's harming the sector. No, I don't think PM Cares and the sector are in any way competition to each other. I think what can really happen is if these two work more in tandem, and join hands to work together, because ultimately the goals are the same. We're just all taking different paths towards the same goal. So I think a more collaborative approach will help even in this space. Otherwise, I don't see PM Cares or any government fund, so to say, as a competition to the sector, because the sector also has the same aim, and we are a non-governmental organization. The entire basis of a non-governmental organization is to supplement efforts of the government. So how best can we do that? How can we make those collaborations happen? Is, I think, what will help. On the other front, in terms of the new amendments and the new changes, the only challenge that we see today, major challenge that we see today is because it's now more stringent in terms of the time period in which the funds have to be utilized and cannot be carried forward to a next financial year. Some of those things are actually leading to people choosing more short-term projects, or the easier ones to get over with, which is actually impacting the long-term strategic flagship programs that will actually make a long-term and sustainable impact in the community. So I think trying to find a balance between those is another challenge, but I don't think it's unachievable. It's definitely achievable, and we are in talks with most of our donors in terms of how can we still, despite those challenges, how can we still look at a multi-year project and a long-term project and at the same time manage our cash flow like that, and the utilizations as per the law, as per the new law. So yeah, that's how, yeah.
Wow, wow, that is really insightful. Thank you so much for joining us.